Hey, this is Matt Sorum from Velvet Revolver, The Cult, and Guns N' Roses. And you're listening to Your Morning Coffee with host Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
From Tim Ingham at Music Business Worldwide, a letter to Steve Boom.
Also from Music Business Worldwide, no, Spotify has not gone down unless you were pirating the premium service.
But who did that? And from NPR, why are the Grammys rock categories stuck in the past? Well, all of these things and so much more when we start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. 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 On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, of course, Jay, that is the mighty Led Zeppelin. I finally went out and saw the movie last Sunday, Becoming Led Zeppelin. If you haven't seen it, go see it at the theater, in IMAX, in fact, which is what I did. And it is a fantastic, fantastic movie. Very enjoyable. So
Looking forward to it.
It's really, really good. By the way, Jay, of course, as you know, but our listeners do not or may not know, our Benji Rogers special episode is live on it. Benji explains how AI platforms are training on intellectual property, like words and music, and provides a path to attribution and monetization. And boy, did we have a fantastic and fun time chatting with Benji.
Speaking of AI and music, according to a recent article in Billboard that we talked about, the U.S. Copyright Office issued a new directive affirming that fully AI-generated works are ineligible for copyright protection. This week, I sat down with Alexis Schreiber from Schwartz & Schreiber. Let's listen in as she breaks it all down for us. Alexis, so good to see you.
Hi, Jay. Great to be back.
So we're going to talk about AI today. And, the Copyright Office issued a new directive affirming that fully AI-generated works, they're not eligible for copyright protection. We read that in Billboard. So I wanted to ask you, if a song is created entirely with generative AI, is that essentially public domain, free for anybody to use without paying for it, and can they monetize it?
Yeah, essentially, it's interesting because in this directive, the Copyright Office reinforced that they won't be protecting fully AI-generated works. So in theory, there's no repercussion for this unauthorized use from the Copyright Office from an infringement perspective, as we're used to for intellectual property. So that being said, things can change over time, and there's still terms and conditions of these, platforms that we need to keep in mind. So it's not essentially all fair game, but the enforcement from the Copyright Office from an infringement perspective is going to be limited for now.
Suppose you use AI to quote unquote write a song, right? Generative AI. And suppose the AI spits out something trained on somebody else's copyrighted material. And you perform or publish this song, have you broken copyright law, and could you be held liable?
Yeah, this is a really hot topic right now, and one that I think artists should really be keeping an eye on, because the short answer is yes, you could be held liable if you're the one that's commercially exploiting and monetizing a song that infringes on someone else's work, whether or not that infringement was intentional. So, a lot of artists are going to take the perspective like, well, yeah, but I had no idea. It was the machine, AI generated it, had no involvement in that. But because they're the ones that are exploiting it, they are the first target as far as somebody coming and saying, hey, that's learned and infringing on off of my song. So it's definitely another reason that artists should be inputting their own original, authorship and material into the songs, just like, an additional reason for that.
Yeah, I saw this great piece about Randy Travis, who sadly he had a stroke and he can't sing anymore. And they're using that generative AI to create new music, but it's trained on his music. And I think that's really amazing, which leads to the last question is, is there anything really being done today to identify and claim copyrighted material from some of these platforms like Suno and Udio, and there's more, but they're training on, or allegedly training on, someone else's intellectual property. Are there any ways that we can sort of tell?
Yeah, it's tough because there are, like the Randy Travis, there's some unbelievable use cases for these things, and it's very exciting. Like, definitely don't want to hinder this advancement or anything like that, but still obviously keeping in mind that artists need to make money and monetize, everything that they can. So it's interesting because I think that there are many platforms that are going to be focused on developing technology to detect and combat this technology. So it's almost like a battle of the technologies in a sense. That's going to be really interesting because they're going to be trying to determine the source, the authorship, because right now they can say, we don't want fully AI generated songs, but how will they know is a different story. So I think that it's in the works to, make and create this type of technology to detect these things. Also, from a legal perspective, there's pending lawsuits out there. Like there's the Universal Music Group and Concord sued Anthropic for their AI system that was trained on their unauthorized songs and things like that. So I think that the results of these lawsuits are also going to be really important to keep an eye on and kind of see where things go from there.
Yeah, I know you'll be watching this really closely, so we'll have to talk again. Where can people learn more about you, Alexis, and Schwartz and Schreiber?
Yeah, no, of course. So you can contact us at info@schwartzschreiber.com. We're on Instagram and we're pretty active everywhere. So anywhere you can find us on LinkedIn, Alexis Schreiber.
Appreciate your insights always.
Thanks, Jay. Thank you always.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
We really appreciate these folks coming on and explaining this, breaking it down for us. Thank you, Alexis. And by the way, Schwartz and Schreiber is a modern day law firm, and they specialize in music entertainment and technology.
A couple of bullet points, Jay, from on the current state of AI and the music business. This from CSAC. Quickly generated AI songs flooding DSPs could put 24% of music creators' revenues at risk by 2028.
Wow.
That is an alarming number. Mm-hmm. And this from Billboard. 10% of the tracks uploaded to Deezer today are fully AI generated.
Yeah. And you and I had a conversation sort of off the record with an industry expert at the Music Tectonics conference, and he said that he thought that number was double that. So what's being done? SoundCloud prohibits monetization of fully AI-generated tracks. That's good news. YouTube has a new technology built into Content ID that detects AI-generated voices. And we're reporting on Spotify. They're saying that they're working on a solution as well.
Right, and Deezer has launched an AI detection tool. But Amazon has taken a totally different approach.
Yeah, they have.
And Tim Ingham from Music Business Worldwide calls out Amazon's Steve Boom. And we're going to get to that in just a minute.
Yeah, a couple of other things in the news this week. I'm heading out tomorrow to South by Southwest. By the time you listen to this, I'll have been there probably for a couple of days. And if you're coming to South by Southwest, I've got an incredible panel, which is Monday, if you listen to this, at 2:30 in the afternoon. Anyway, the panel's called Scrubbing the System, Music Data Management Today, with some very smart people. Our friend Molly Newman, president of CD Baby, Dave Bogan from the MLC, and Rel Lefargu from Reservoir. I hope to see some of you there.
I am sorry I'm missing that because that's going to be a wonderful panel. Interesting video of the week. Rick Beato talks about a recent interview with Jack Antonoff, and he says, I'm tired of one-off hits. Here's why albums will always win. Let's listen in.
I just came across this clip of Jack Antonoff talking about the importance of making full-length albums. Check it out.
It's almost stunning that we still believe some of the myths.
Which myths are you talking about?
Album isn't God. Album is God, period. Always has been. There's no brilliant artist that's existed for a real period of time and changed things and has a real audience that isn't based on albums. They don't exist.
He thinks like I do, that in today's music landscape, which is dominated by quick hits, singles, and viral videos, it's even more important for artists to put out cohesive, full-length bodies of work. Think about your favorite records. The singles you may come to the record for, you hear them on the radio, you hear them on Spotify, or they're suggested to you however you arrive at them. But then you get the full-length record, and then you start realizing, you know what? These album tracks are really the songs that are the best ones on the record. You've all had that experience. It's so common to come to a record based on a single and then realize, oh, that's not even close to being the best song on here. I remember reading an article with Rick Rubin where he says that an album offers a sense of cohesion, where you need the multiple or group of songs that explore a thread or a concept or a mood that lets the artist's voice really resonate. Another way of looking at it is that by weaving songs together under a unifying theme or sound, an album becomes more than just a collection of tracks. Think of albums like Zeppelin 4 or Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd or Boston's first album or Back in Black by AC/DC or The Chronic by Dr. Dre or the Marshall Mathers LP by Eminem. These aren't just a collection of songs. They create a cohesive listening experience from beginning to end that can't be divorced from itself. If you listen to a single, you might listen to it, you might put it in a playlist, but after it's over in 3 minutes, you may just move on to something else. But if you can engage your audience into a 30 or 60-minute experience, these are the things that develop that emotional connection between you and the audience. That's going to get people to come out to your shows. That's going to get you your 1,000 super fans. They're going to help fund all of your projects. It's incredibly important for that. Historically, music's been dominated by the album format. If you think about iconic records like Fleetwood Mac Rumours or the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper or Michael Jackson's Thriller, these weren't just collections of hits, they were cultural touchstones that defined eras. Quincy Jones once said, when you talk about those albums, you're talking about milestones that changed the game. It's not just one hit song, it's the entire journey that becomes legendary. Albums carry a weight and significance, good ones at least, that can shape an artist's legacy way more than a string of standalone singles ever could. When an artist releases a full-length album, it's not just about the music, it's about creating a whole world around that record. The artwork, the music videos, the stage production, the merch, the interviews associated with it, all tie back to a central theme or identity. This era approach builds an ongoing dialogue with fans, which sparks excitement and anticipation that can last for months or years. Album tracks are a place where artists can be even more experimental. If you think about the Beatles' Revolver album, the last track on there, Tomorrow Never Knows, which is a psychedelic masterpiece by John Lennon, is really a complete departure from anything the Beatles had done before. This showed the Beatles fans the band's willingness to push boundaries. This is a kind of freedom that the Beatles felt their audience was accepting of and helped the band continue to innovate. In the streaming era, many people worry, or should I say, understand that attention spans are shrinking. I think you've heard me mention that a couple times. But ironically, a well-sequenced album can actually thrive on streaming platforms. Listeners who love your music will binge the entire record and revisit their favorite tracks again and again. Jimmy Iovine, co-founder of Interscope, suggested in a BBC interview that a single is a quick fix, but an album can keep people coming back. You give listeners more reasons to connect, more themes, more lyrics that resonate, and more layers to unpack. The best albums become evergreen, discovering new audiences over time, fueled by word of mouth and playlist features. Finally, from a career standpoint, albums function as milestones that mark an artist's evolution. This is how fans track your growth through phases or eras that each album represents. Jack Antonoff put it like this: years down the line, people might talk about your first album or your breakout album or your experimental album. Those chapters define you as an artist in ways that a playlist of singles can't. Over time, that discography becomes the backbone of an artist's legacy, giving fans a roadmap through their creative journey. All the things I talked about in this video honestly go for any genre of music. For people making fusion records, progressive metal records, rock records, pop records, hip-hop records, you should make full-length albums and not just focus on one song or two or even an EP. Write enough songs so that you have enough songs to pick from to make a cohesive album.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
A stake in the sand, for
yeah.
sure.
Well, you and I are such big Rick Beato fans, and
We are.
I love his video channel. You know, he's just the best. And I thought this was really great. And we talk so much about albums versus tracks. And some people say today it's a track-based economy. It's all about, releasing a track every 4 to 6 weeks, and then maybe you release an EP. Maybe you combine those into an album. You sell at the merch table or online. But it's important, and I think albums are important. And I love that Jack Antonoff, sort of calls out that all these iconic artists, they made it with albums. So really great job from Rick Beato. We are dropping this week a special bonus episode of the Your Morning Coffee podcast with A2IM president and CEO Richard Burgess, and that's coming Wednesday. So check your feed for that. It's an incredible conversation. Richard is just an icon in the music industry as a musician, a singer, songwriter, record producer, composer, author, manager, marketer, inventor. We could go on and on. Really, really great conversation with Richard.
Indeed. And then what's today? Today's Saturday. Yesterday, we sat down with legendary entertainment lawyer Dina LaPolte. Special bonus episode is coming shortly. She, of course, has a new book out, a podcast. We talked about industry changes and challenges faced and advice for artists. She is always a really fun interview and boy, and a musician, a former musician as well. So we had a lovely chat.
Well, we absolutely love Dina LaPolte, and if you don't know who she is, you should Google her. She's a powerhouse industry leader, and she's a lawyer. And it's funny, we talk about the story on the podcast where she was in a band and they used to open for Joan Jett, and guess what? Now Joan Jett's one of her clients, as a lawyer, including like Doja Cat and Mary J. Blige. Anyway, you really need to listen to this episode. She is a force of nature, and we just think she's the best. There was an interesting article in Loudwire that a lot of people were talking about, and this one was written by Chuck Armstrong, and the headline was, Tobias Forge dives deep into no phones policy on Ghost's upcoming tour. He says it's just 2 hours of your life, and this is a topic that's super interesting, and we're seeing these companies, well, not these companies, these artists who are using those Yonder bags or other, devices to sort of take the phones away during the performance. And Tobias Forge talked about, the new song he's got out, Ghost has out, Satanized, a new video, which is wonderful, by the way. But he also had plenty to say about their no phones policy on their upcoming Skeletor World Tour.
They have such a great sense of humor. He does.
Yes.
Ghost frontman Tobias Forge said, "We want fans to be there in the moment." He says, "I think there was a lot of reflection that came as we had done the LA shows where we recorded right here, right now. Because of the nature of filming, we decided to do the Yonder pouches then. the first thing that hit us that first night we came off stage was the crowd was phenomenal.
Yeah, they were engaged, right? We've all been to these
Right.
shows, and I was telling you that I hosted an event in New York where we had Yonder bags, and you take away people's phones, you take away that distraction. Tobias went on to say, we came off the first night, and we were just blown away that these people were so engaged. The face value of not seeing phones was literally like time travel. I'm not talking about like in the 80s. I'm talking about maybe 10 years back in time when people were generally not filming so much. Whereas now in modern times, it's just ridiculous. If you're playing in front of 10,000 people, 8,000 people are holding a phone up. I wish it was like this all the time.
Yes, and if you don't know what a Yonder pack is, it's a sort of a neoprene little sack that you put your phone in when you go to an event, and then it's locked. So you're actually holding the pack with your phone, but you just can't get to it. And then there's a little magnetic device that releases it when you leave.
Yeah, and let's say that you have kids at home, for example, and you need to check in on the babysitter, or you may have an emergency going. You, like you just pointed out, you have the phone on you. It's just in this little pouch that you keep with you. And if you need to make a call or receive a call, you just walk over to one of the areas, these safe areas, and you can make your call and do what you need to do. So it's a really good idea. And if you've ever been to a show where they take away phones, it's special. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it forces you to be in the moment, which is lovely. A great piece, by the way, from our good friend Glenn Peoples, of course, at the Ledger newsletter over Billboard. UMG is in conversations with multiple streamers on super premium tiers. And that's good news for everybody, Glenn says. Super premium offerings will allow platforms and labels to segment and capture customer value at higher than ever levels. So says UMG CEO Lucian Grange last Thursday.
Yep, it's going to be interesting how this whole super fan, super premium tiers thing works out. You know, we talked about this over the last few weeks. Glenn writes, get ready for a new era of innovation by streaming services. That was a message sent by UMG Chief Digital Officer Michael Nash during the company's fourth quarter earnings call last Thursday, during which he noted that the label is currently in talks with all of the streaming partners, not just Spotify, about super premium tiers.
UMG's market research suggests that 20% of music subscribers are likely to pay for a super fan streaming product, according to Nash. If Spotify reaches that threshold, it will have converted roughly 53 million of its 263 million subscribers into higher paying customers. That's as of December 31st.
Yeah, Glenn goes on to write that it's already worked for at least one company outside of the U.S. We talked about Tencent Music Entertainment in China. You know, they've already proven there's a demand for high-priced, value-added streaming products. Its Super VIP tour, which costs 5 times the normal subscription rate, had 10 million subscribers at the end of September, over 8% of Tencent's 119 million total subscribers. It's pretty good. If other streamers can successfully follow suit, new superfan streaming products will generate more revenue for artists, rights holders, and streaming platforms, and to help the music business continue to grow for years to come.
Yep. Seems like a very good thing.
Yeah, we'll see.
This next one from Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide. YouTube Music hits 125 million subscribers, adding 2 million subscribers per month on average over the past year. Again, Universal Music Group's chairman and CEO, Sir Lucian Grange, confirmed on UMG's Q3 earnings call at the end of October that YouTube Music has become one of the fastest growing players in subscription. That's his words. And now we know exactly how fast.
Yes, it's growing really fast. The platform, which also operates the TikTok rival, Shorts, has surpassed a significant milestone of 125 million paid YouTube Music and premium subscribers worldwide, including trials. The milestone means that YouTube added 25 million subscribers over the last 12 months. That's incredible. But, that works out to slightly over 2 million subscribers per month on average since its last subscriber announcement of 100 million, and that was February of 2024.
Right. So YouTube Music is available as a standalone subscription platform or bundled into a YouTube Premium subscription, just as a reminder. A question the entire music business will likely be asking today is, how does YouTube's subscriber growth compare to that of the world's largest subscription music streaming platform, Spotify?
Yeah, this is super interesting. In the 12 months to end December, Spotify added 27 million net paying subscribers, right? So in the last year or so, they added 27 million. YouTube added 25 million in that same period to reach 125 million paid subscribers versus Spotify's 263 million paying subscribers. And there was an article that Leo Cohen was quoted that he's aiming to surpass Spotify. So I reached out to Leo Cohen's people, and hopefully we can get him on to discuss that. But they're making some serious ground, and they're making it fast.
Well, and you and I have talked about this a lot. I love YouTube for the stuff that's there that's nowhere else. And I am constantly just going and looking at videos of live performances of artists and demos. And there's just so much stuff on YouTube that's so fun and fascinating to go explore. There's nowhere else. And so I'm a big fan for sure. But Jay, before we get into our major big stories, what do you say we thank our sponsors?
Yeah, we couldn't do it without them. We are sponsored by the Mechanical Licensing Collective. The MLC is a nonprofit organization, and they're making a big difference for songwriters, music publishers, and other rights holders by transforming how they receive mechanical royalties from services like Spotify and Apple Music in the U.S. Every single month, the MLC collects the streaming data and royalties from those platforms. It matches the money to the creator who's earned it, and then it pays them or their publishers or admin partners the royalties that they're due. To date, the MLC has already distributed over $2.5 million in total royalties and has nearly 50,000 members worldwide. If you're a songwriter, a composer, a lyricist, or a music streaming publisher, admin, you need to become a member of the MLC to ensure that you're not leaving any money on the table. Best of all, membership is completely free, and the MLC pays out 100% of the royalties it receives. All you have to do is visit themlc.com to learn more.
To get your money. Absolutely. Hey, and a special thanks to Music.ai. Music.ai is a trailblazing AI-powered music and audio platform offering an expansive suite of over 50 stackable AI audio solutions. Want to change the tempo or pitch of your song, adjust instruments or vocals, mute background noise in a movie? Music.ai makes it easy. Embraced, I should say, by record labels, agencies, tech firms, and developers, Music.ai is synonymous with audio innovation. With over 45 million users, their tools process over 2 million minutes of audio daily. They can process yours today. Jump over to Music.ai to get started. Super, super cool tools that we just love.
Sure is.
Lose ourselves in, to be honest. And by the way, every week, I get to hang out with my good friend Jay Gilbert, music industry consultant, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups, and a bon vivant man about town.
Wow. That's cool. I like the way that sounds. I don't know what it means, but I like the way it sounds. I get to do this podcast every week. My good friend Mike Etchart, he's a longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group, and he got to see the Led Zeppelin documentary before me, but that's okay. That's pretty standard fare.
Oh, sometimes, not always. Well, let's jump into the stories. This first one, Jay, it is a biggie. This is from our friend Tim Ingham over at Music Business Worldwide. It's a letter to Steve Boom. Now, Steve Boom is Vice President of Audio, Twitch, and Games at Amazon. Before that, he was the Vice President of Amazon Music. The following op-ed comes from Music Business Worldwide founder Tim Ingham. It originally appeared in Tim's Music Business Worldwide review newsletter, sent last week exclusively to Music Business Worldwide Plus subscribers.
Yeah, and I am a Music Business Worldwide Plus subscriber, and I encourage everybody who's listening to become one. It's phenomenal. So we're going to read the letter that Tim Ingham, this open letter to Steve Boom. Dear Steve, as chairman of Music Cares, you should feel proud. 4 weeks ago, you led a fundraiser in Los Angeles that generated millions of dollars for a vital cause. It was stuffed with performances that, ironically enough, felt life-affirmingly human. But in your other role as VP of Audio at Amazon, aka Jeff Bezos' de facto, head of music, well, in your shoes, pride is far from what I'd be feeling today.
Right. Tim goes on to say, watching my Amazon colleagues cheerfully announce a partnership with Suno, the generative AI platform currently being sued for mass copyright infringement by companies representing over 70% of the recorded music market, at least I'd feel disbelief and betrayal over principles you have publicly espoused.
He writes, you are, after all, the same Steve Boom who recently and proudly announced his company's new global partnership with Universal Music Group. That December announcement clearly stated, quote, UMG and Amazon will work collaboratively to address, among other things, unlawful AI-generated content, end quote. It further promised that Amazon had made a commitment to advancing and safeguarding human artistry.
He says, you yourself, Steve, were quoted as pledging that Amazon would, in quotation marks, work to protect the work of artists, songwriters, and publishers. What the fuck happened? On February 27th, Amazon breezily confirmed that Suno was being integrated into Alexa, enabling users to turn simple creative requests into complete songs, including vocals, lyrics, and instrumentation.
Vocals, lyrics, and instrumentation seemingly built on the unlicensed work of songwriters and artists, the same songwriters and artists you properly licensed to build Amazon Music. Lest we forget that Suno itself has admitted to training its model on, quote, essentially all music files of reasonable quality that are accessible on the open internet, end quote.
So Suno flagrantly argues that doing so without A, asking rights holders, or B, paying rights holders is somehow fair use. Does that sound like the sort of behavior that Amazon, with its promise to address unlawful AI-generated content, should be publicly legitimizing, let alone promoting?
Tim goes on to say, I realize that in sprawling FANG corporations, F-A-A-N-G.
FANG, by the way, is the acronym that refers to the 5 prominent American tech companies, which, of course, is Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google.
The left hand doesn't always speak to the right hand on this stuff. You may be barely consulted on the Suno tie-up, if at all. I also doubt that Amazon checked with you before investing $8 billion in Anthropic, an AI company also being sued by your friends at Universal Music Group. Yet a craven willingness to denude songwriters of their assets, all for a cheap Alexa gimmick, doesn't reflect the Amazon Music I know, or at least the Amazon Music I have been sold.
He says, I'm talking about the Amazon Music that music publishers rallied to defend 4 months ago when you added a library of audiobooks to your core service. You may recall NMPA chief David Israelite said at the time, Amazon is engaged with the music publishing and songwriting industry in a respectful and productive way, unlike Spotify, referring to Spotify's infamous royalty-cutting bundling trick in the U.S.
What a difference a few weeks make. As we stand here today, Spotify has remedied much of the ugliness that the mechanical royalty cut in new direct deals with Universal and Warner. Amazon, by contrast, is cozying up to platforms looting thousands of songs into their databases without asking a soul. The result? Amazon now lies in bed with Suno CEO who said the company's product was a great thing for humanity because, this is an actual quote, it's not really enjoyable to make music now.
So his rationale for this drivel? Because it, in quotation marks, takes a lot of time, a lot of practice. You have to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software. As if these demands on the path to virtuosity are a bad thing. As if they are a problem to be solved. Whose side do you and Amazon want to be on, Steve? That guy? Or Paul McCartney, Elton John, Kate Bush, The Clash, Hans Zimmer, ABBA, and all of the other legends currently fighting against AI companies sucking the bones of the greatest music ever written?
Tim continues, personally, I think growing panic over the concept of AI platforms one day replacing artists is a little overblown. As I've written before, I'm convinced that the true joy of recorded music lies in us, quote unquote, communing with the artists who made it. Impressive robots, thankfully, will never offer that connection.
But behind the scenes songwriters and producers, this whole segment of human talent is under threat of being asset stripped and replicated by profiteering tech bros sloshing buckets of genius into their machines without even asking. Steve, last year you hired Matt Serletic as Amazon Music's Director of AI Innovations and Interactive Experiences. When he took the job, he exclaimed, "I'm excited to reimagine how people connect with music in the age of AI."
Yeah, but how saddening those words look today in the wake of this Alexa plus Suno. I'm sure I'm not the first person to address this with you in your inbox, so I'll echo what I'm sure many of your music rights holder partners are saying. This isn't good, Steve. Amazon Music no longer looks like a friend of the music industry it did yesterday. If you think so too, please stand up and say it loud enough for Seattle to take note. Fantastic open letter from Tim Ingham. Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. Really, really well done, Tim. It needed to be said. Our next story, Jay, it's also from Music Business Worldwide. Daniel Tenser over there. No, Spotify hasn't gone down unless you were pirating the premium service. Over the last few days, the online world has been rife with reports that Spotify is down. But it appears only down for those listeners who were using pirate apps to access the streaming service's premium tier for free.
Uh-oh. Music Business Worldwide understands that Spotify has carried out changes to enforce its terms and conditions better. As a result, some quote-unquote cracked versions of its premium service have stopped working. This apparently what's behind a spike in reports at sites like Down Detector, where a number of commenters have admitted that they were using cracks to access the premium features like ad-free listening.
Listeners using these unauthorized cracks still have access to their free ad-supported Spotify accounts and still have the option to upgrade to a premium tier. The reality that Spotify is a target for piracy is somewhat ironic, given that the initial idea behind the service was to combat music piracy by giving listeners a single online hub where they have unlimited access to virtually all of the world's music.
Yeah, that's the narrative. If you read Liz Pelly's book, Mood Machine, you'll see the other side of that argument. This is apparently not the first time that Spotify has taken steps to prevent pirated access to premium. In November, Android devices, the users in India, reported that some unauthorized APK, that's Android Package Kit files, had stopped giving them access to Spotify.
Right. Spotify also recently made changes to its third-party developer ecosystem, halting access for developers to data such as recommendations, related artists, featured playlists, category playlists, and 30-second preview URLs. Access to audio features and audio analysis was also blocked.
Right. And finally, while Spotify said the changes were made with the aim of creating a more secure platform, some third-party app developers speculated the changes were meant to prevent AI developers from scraping music from Spotify's platforms. You can read the full article, Music Business Worldwide.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. And by the way, Jay, what about our other sponsors? We, again, are so lucky to have many, many sponsors for the show, and we certainly could not do without them.
Yeah, a special shout out to Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It's edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Indeed, Bands in Town. Over 90 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform connecting over 650,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms. We love Bands in Town.
We sure do.
Oh my God, it's always on the first page of my telefono. And our last story, Jay, it's from NPR. Mark Hogan over there. Why are Grammys rock categories stuck in the past? At this year's Grammy Awards on February 2nd, the rock categories look like a time capsule for another era. While awards in other genres went to rising stars such as Doechii, Chappell Roan, and Sabrina Carpenter, the prize for Best Rock Performance went to the Beatles. And the winner in 2025 for Best Rock Album, the Rolling Stones.
Upon closer inspection, rock at the 67th Annual Grammys seemed even more dated. The other rock award recipient, St. Vincent, for Best Rock Song, is no octogenarian, that's easy for you to say, but she's nevertheless a familiar multi-Grammy winning presence at the ceremony, going back to her first win a decade ago. Can you believe that? As Stereo Gum noted, just two of the acts nominated for rock awards this year, UK band Idols and Dublin-based Fountains DC, released their debut albums in the past 20 years, and both already second-time nominees in this category. And other rock nominees are bands that have kept showing up again and again, like Green Day, Black Keys, and Pearl Jam, who have all been nominated over a dozen times.
Well, still, even by Grammy standards, 2025's Rock Awards seem particularly stale. To understand why, it might help to know how the voting works. To be eligible this cycle, recordings needed to be commercially released in the United States between September 16th of 2023 and August 30th of 2024. So a high-profile September rock release like MJ Lederman's Manning Fireworks wouldn't qualify until 2026. Academy members and record labels submit entries, which experts in various areas review for eligibility and to be sure they are placed in the proper categories, no write-ins. The Academy's roughly 13,000 voting members, who are typically performers, songwriters, producers, and other music creators, then receive first-round ballots. Along with voting in the 6 general fields like Song of the Year and Album of the Year, they each may vote in up to 10 categories across up to 3 genre fields, basically groupings of similar genres. Rock, metal, and alternative are in one field, while rap and R&B in another, and pop and dance electronic are in a third.
Yeah, it sounds really complicated. It's really not. I've been a voting member for years, and the process is very simple. After nominees are announced, all voting members also receive the final ballot, where they may once again vote in up to 10 categories across 3 genre fields, like you just mentioned, plus those general fields that we talked about. The Academy encourages members to vote in categories based on where they're active as peers. That's very important. The number of entries in each category ranges into the hundreds. So the CEO of the Academy, Harvey Mason Jr., he pointed out that the Academy's ongoing efforts to keep its voting body, as he says, refreshed and relevant and reflective of what's going on in music.
Right. And he said in October, the organization announced that 66% of its electorate was new since 2019, as thousands of women and voting members of diverse backgrounds joined, and some older members failed to requalify. Whoops.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. So it's still a little bit stale, but maybe it's going to be getting better.
The Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Who would have thought?
Obviously.
And we love the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, but they've had their awards. They've had their days in the sun. Let's look at some of the new rock talent, please.
Absolutely. Exactly. Well, it is time to wrap up the show. And if you enjoy the show, Jay and I would certainly appreciate it if you tell just one friend. That would really make a difference for us. Big thanks to the MLC, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. We certainly appreciate their participation. Couldn't do it without them. Boy, we are so lucky to have them. And big thanks to you, the listeners. So on behalf of Jay Gilbert and myself, Mike Etchart, thanks for listening in, and we will be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.